Hey, how are you? This is Thta Master Ingvar Johansson from Iceland, or Sip It on YouTube. And we're going to do some more tactics, use the tactics trainer. This wonderful tool. There are many tools to do it, but in this one, on chess.com, you can set the rating range. And for this one, we have selected 1800 to 2000. And why have we done that? Well, it was requested by Alex Pachalov in a comment on one of my other YouTube videos, one with a problem rating of 1000 to 1200. So, keep active, you never know. I listen to you, so I try to do what you want me to do. So here it is. So let's move on to the tactics, and I hope you enjoy. Okay, so let's get cracking. Tactics for 1800 to 2000. We already did one for 1000 to 1200, so these will be considerably more difficult, and 1800 to 2000 we can consider to be, well, around the middle of the pack, or perhaps slightly above average at least. So this first one here, let's take stock. Both sides have their minor pieces on the board. White has 6 pawns and black also. So material is equal. Looks like we played bishop takes f7 next, last move, which black answered with king e8 to e7. We didn't want to take the bishop because knight to e5 check. Remember, the black king would have been here if he had taken. Then we take the bishop. Okay, maybe that's not that horrible for black. Well, probably it is. But okay. So what can we do here? The king position is something we should look at immediately. It's lined up with the queen here, so if we could go check on this diagonal. Remember, jacks, captures, also applies to 1800 to 2000. But I think in most of these problems, there's going to be some calculation required. So bishop g5 check, but then knight f6 blocks the check. This knight can interpose on this diagonal. So that's not going to work. Having looked at that, and that the knight can interpose, we can look at, okay, but what if we just take the knight? That's also possible. And then if rook takes the bishop on g8, like this, then we can play bishop to g5. Check, and win the queen. Okay. We can take that a step further. Black realizes that we will check here, so after we take on g8, we can play queen a5 check. So to get the queen out of this diagonal. He can, but we can interpose the bishop here, bishop d2. Attacking the queen, and our piece is still here, so this should win a piece. So this we found out because it was a tactical problem. In a real game, we might have thought, okay, our bishop is attacked, we need to move it back. So bishop b3 would be the first choice. Okay, keep that in the back of our mind. But then look at the forcing moves, jacks, captured, do we have something here? We would figure out this bishop g5 idea, and we would figure out bishop takes g8 and play that move. The problem solved. If rook takes bishop g5 check. That's all we needed to look at. On to the next one. Here we are done rook. We have a big attack. Really menacing pieces around the white king. 2 knights and a queen. So we want to look at some discovered attacks. The queen is not attacked, so whenever we move the knight, then it's going to be a check. So can we win some material? We could play, if this square was available, we could put the knight here and try and attack the queen. And note that whenever the knight moves away, that it's still covering the square that it's on, f3. So white can't interpose on f3, we'll take that. So what we'll do here, we'll basically analyze all the knight moves, you know, what are they accomplishing? There's no real good way to attack the queen, but there is one way. Knight g5. If the king moves to g1, we have knight to h3, and this will be checkmate, because the knight will be covering the f2 square and the g1 square, and the queen will take care of this diagonal, so that's checkmate. So all that remains is to see if white can interpose something. If queen f3 loses the queen, if queen g2 we just take with the mate, so rook f3 is the only move. But then we take with the knight, we have restored what they really call the wrap pawn, and we're still threatening to go back with the knight and give it discoveries, so I would be really surprised if this is not the solution. Okay. Problem rating 2000. Okay, here we are down a piece. 5 pawns, we have 7 pawns or 2 pawns for a piece. And we can immediately regain the piece by taking on d5. So that's the first choice. Queen takes d5 or rook takes d5. It shouldn't really matter. Okay, there's a weak background. Can we take advantage of that? It's hard to see. I mean, see here this is covered twice. The 8th rank is already covered by this rook. So it doesn't seem to be any good way to dislodge this rook off the background. So the only question is if there's some problem with just taking this knight. I don't really see it. We play queen takes d5, but then there's queen takes h3. When black wins back one of the pawns. But once the queen captures here on d5, we're covering the mate on g2, so we have time to make a move there. Drop a pawn. Can we maybe just take on e5? Rook takes e5. There don't seem to be any problem. So, I mean, we're down a piece, so we have to take it. So take it. I thought it would take an h3, but okay. Now just have 2 pawns, no problems. Quick look here if they have anything on this in the analysis board. So I'm waiting for the confirmation of the board being on screen. Yeah, it's roughly on screen. King h8. Queen takes d5. And it says if queen takes h3, rook takes e5 is possible since the queen defends g2. That's what we figured out. And the key idea in this problem is not to go rook takes d5 because queen takes h3 in black does have some counterplay. Okay, so queen takes d5 is more accurate. So a slightly accurate move, not a really I mean a good practical problem, but in terms of tactics maybe not the best one. So this one, okay, rook and bishop. White has a rook and 2 pieces for the queen, which is usually enough, but we also have a pawn, so material is roughly equal. However, Jack captures threats, remember. And it seems to me we might have 2 ways to play it here. And I think one of them might be stronger than the other. So, the first choice is okay, queen is attacked, just move the queen. Just back it up, back it in, let me begin. Queen to a5, queen b8. Queen a5 bishop d2, but okay, queen back to b8, sorry. Safe move. But the forcing moves seem to be some sacrifices here. Rook takes b3 check seems like a move, and maybe rook takes c2. I think rook takes c2 should be sufficient, and the reason for that is if king takes on c2, the queen will jump into c3 check, king has to go back to b1, and then queen b2 will be made with the help of this bishop back here. The other option, rook takes b3, looks slightly more complicated. I think it's also winning. King c1, we have rook b1 mate, and if pawn takes b3, queen takes b3, king c1, we have bishop to c3, and now we're threatening queen b2. But okay, he can play the rook, and if queen jack. Yeah, okay, it's still winning, but promising at least. Like, this one seems easier. King takes. Quick look at the analysis board. To get these in on the go. So rook takes b3 is rook takes c2 is immediately winning -8, but rook takes b3 is -1, which means an advantage for black, but not immediately winning. Pawn takes, queen takes, king c1. Okay, bishop b2. I thought bishop c3 trying to mate. Then maybe something like rook b2 should survive, and there's no mate. Because if we make a check, then the king escapes, and black will need to be careful here. Fair enough. So rook takes c2 is well sufficient. And again, king takes, and queen b2 mate. Boom! Okay, next problem. King takes h6. We just sacrifice the rook, it seems. We don't have a rook, black has 2. Well, because that's so much material, the pawns are almost irrelevant, but jack captures threats. We're gonna need more ammo. So most likely we're gonna make some threatening moves, forcing moves like knight e6 check. The thing with knight e6 is if the rook interposes f4, we have the knight on e6, which is covering g7 and g5. Now that means we can play the rook to h1. There's no square for the king, it's checkmate. If g5, then queen takes d5, covered by the knight, and then queen g7 mate. So there only remains king back to h7. Aha, but then we have rook h1 check. No. Look at that position again. I just, you know, it should be easy to find. So knight e6 check, king h7. In that position, try to see it in your mind's eye. The knight is on e6, the king is on h7. What forcing moves do we have? Okay, we can take the rook here, but he takes back. We're down a piece, so we need to mate. We only have 2 pieces. Okay, that's all the options. We'll come back to that. But what are the other forcing moves? Always find the forcing moves. Rook h1 check is one. And certainly that's what we want to look at and analyze. But there's actually a stronger move. Before we come to that move, rook h1 might also win. King g8. Maybe even rook h8 check, but okay, he starts running king f7. And it might not be immediately clear, but the move that ends the game immediately, knight e6, I'll play the move. He has to go king h7. And the move that ends it immediately, and this is sort of Anastasia made, just without the 8th rank. So if you go to the pattern recognition video number 1, I'll link it in the description. Remember, the king was on g8, we went Knight e7 check. King went to the corner, and queen took on h7. King took back, and rook to the h file checkmate. We can do the same here. Queen h6, luring the king to this square. If he had gone to g8, then queen to g7 is made. Probably to the knight. But now we have a modified Anastasia mate, where the 8th rank has been removed, so the 7th rank amounts to the 8th rank, and now we have to the h file checkmate. So that's how the patterns work, man. Always love it when we get the patterns in action. And this is just a version of Anastasia. So, here we are faced with some threats. We are up a pawn, but the immediate threat is queen takes h2 checkmate, which is a problem. Also, our bishop is attacked. Pawn takes e4. So we need to find something strong here, otherwise we are simply gonna lose the game. And we're gonna lose it immediately. I have a feeling this position is fabricated because the pieces just work together too nicely. You know, how did White get into this situation here with the bishop blocking the e-file? What was Black's last move? Everything looks a bit artificial, so I'll quickly check after the game, but I've seen the solution. So, Black is threatening mate, so we need the forcing move. Okay, we move the bishop, we get checkmated. We defend the mate with pawn to g3 and pawn to h3, we lose a piece. We can play rook takes g6. That deflects the rook because, okay, he has to take now. He takes rook on h6. So rook takes back. But then, once we take the rook back, he takes our bishop on e4, which has been hanging the whole time, and we're down a piece. So only one forcing move remains to be covered, and that's queen takes h6, which is check. So that's forcing. If he takes it, then rook takes g6 check. King h7 looks like the most natural move. But then we need more pieces in the attack. And very conveniently, we need the rook on the h file. And how do we get it to the h file? Well, maybe rook a3. And again, very conveniently, there's nothing preventing the rook from coming to h3. Our back rank is conveniently covered by the bishop here. Queen can't do anything. Nobody can interpose on the 7th rank, so this will be working. Check. And rook a3, the key move. But this is actually hard to see because you have to calculate the forcing move and then find a sneaky move here, rook a3. So I'm surprised this. I think that, this tactic could be higher rated actually. So quick look at the analysis board. Yeah, it don't say anything. I just have the solution here. Queen takes h6, and there's nothing about where this position came from. So let's not dwell on that. But I have a feeling this position is fabricated. Okay. Now the white pieces were down a pawn. So if we can't queen this pawn here, then we are in trouble. Because we don't have enough material. The only piece that can stop the pawn is this bishop. So it's immediately threatening to take the pawn. So most likely in a real game we would play g7. So okay, it's your move, it's a tournament game. g7. Okay, I'm gonna play g7. But a quick look, do I have fortune moves? Yes, bishop a6 check. Does that do anything? He moves the king, let's say king here. Or even king here, which looks stronger actually. Keeping this pawn. He's attacking our pawn, we move the pawn, he prevents it from queening. And then he attacks our remaining pawn if he wants to draw, and we can't really do much. Okay, so bishop a6 doesn't do much. Bishop f5. No, he just takes it, move the pawn. He goes here, no promotion. And the final forcing move is d3 check. Okay, he has two options. Bishop takes d3. But then we can play bishop a6. The king moves, and now we take the bishop, which is on d3. And once that has been exchanged, we can queen the pawn. He's too far ahead to queen his own pawns. So okay, d3 check, but what if he takes with the king? Fair enough. Now we move our pawn. He must go here to prevent us from queening. But then we can play the bishop to f5. Check, another forcing move. And a tricky move to find. But it's like with every position. Initially and in your calculations, you have to look and find the forcing moves. Bishop f5 check is a forcing move. Remember, the king is here on d3. The bishop is here on h7. So once we play the bishop to f5, it's check. And he either moves the king or we pick up the bishop on h7, or he takes the bishop but then he loses control over the queening square with the bishop, and we can queen the pawn. So d3. He takes with the king, the trickier option, we move the pawn, we play bishop f5 check. He takes it, we make a queen. And we win again.